Hello and welcome to another episode of WODtv. This is a special pre-games bulletin edition.
That's right. We're both working actually right now on a top secret important training session. In sports science literature, they refer to it as acclimatization, basically building up the base tan for California to make sure I'm armored against the hot sun. Today's episode is following on the heels of Dave Castro's announcement that there's going to be a beach event. So we're going to go over some of our expectations for the 2014 CrossFit Games, a wish list of what we do want to see, and then a list of a couple things we don't want to see. So I'll maybe kick things off. I've been saying this since last year. I think there's going to be paddleboarding at the Games, basically because when Dave made the announcement of the half marathon row, the first thing he did at the athlete dinner was he brought out a paddleboard. And they said, oh no, that's for next year's Games, and we all sort of laughed. But I'm going to take him at his word and say there's going to be a paddleboard this year. So if not, then Dave Castro's a liar. The other thing I think might happen is there might be some sort of a throwback to aromas. In the early days of the CrossFit Games, I think they might take us back there and maybe do a combination of the long run and the deadlift ladder. So going back to sort of some basics of the testing. Whether or not they do that, I do think that if there is a strength test, it will be some sort of return to a classic strength movement. We've seen a big emphasis on the Olympic lifts over the past couple of years at Games and at regionals. So I think we're overdue for a return to something like maybe a deadlift ladder or a max thruster, or an upper body test like a bench press. I do think that's another one of my predictions. I think we'll see some bench press this year. Call me crazy, it's not the most functional movement, but it's something that if you're testing upper body with a strict press, there's a lot of variation in terms of what is or isn't strict and who's leaning or rocking or whatever. And the bench press also might appeal more to the average sort of gym goer who's getting more and more interested in CrossFit, who doesn't really know much about CrossFit. They see a bench press and say, oh, that's something I've done, that's something I can relate to. Wow, look at these performances. So that's my call there. Yeah, what do you think we're going to see?
Yeah, I think that that whole kind of paddleboard thing, it could have been playing to the crowd, that announcement last year. It could have been truthful. I think if there is going to be a paddleboard event it's going to be not necessarily a stand-up paddleboard event. It's going to be a smaller paddleboard of some sort, and you're going to have a lying down performance. So more of just lying down on the board and swimming type motion to the shoulders. The main reason I think of that is because the actual technique of stand-up paddleboarding could be a big separator amongst people, and it's not necessarily a survival skill like, say, swimming is, that we can expect everyone to have that skill. But yeah, the beach event could definitely have a paddleboard in it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and with the strength stuff, I think actually what's going to happen is there may not be a classical barbell strength single event movement. I think what we're going to see is something that's maybe a more applied strength. So maybe something like a ladder of Atlas stones, and you've got to place them on a pedestal just like the World's Strongest Man, and you've got to work your way up. So looking a bit more applied this year maybe with that strength event. And then something that hasn't been in yet in the Games is actually a weight vest, and we know there's benchmark WODs with weight vests in them, and kind of falls in line with that kind of Navy SEAL Marines tough mentality that CrossFit is associated with. So I think there could be a weight vest event this year.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I expected there to be one last year, and I think given that they tested and sort of ruled out people who couldn't do a lot of strict upper body stuff at regionals, if they threw in a weight vest with some, pull-ups or push-ups or whatever, chances are most competitors will be able to handle it. So that might be sort of a gateway for that.
Yeah.
So, wish list. What do we
want to
see? I would love to see another obstacle course. I really liked, I found it really enjoyable. What was that, 2012? The obstacle course we did?
Yes.
And I think it's a great test of fitness because you set out some things that don't necessarily have a strict sort of, loading or range of motion, but it's just like you got to get from point A to point B, and different body types will adapt to that differently, and some people might move totally in different ways and work their particular body type around the task.
Right.
So I think that's a good test of fitness at this level of competition, because everyone can do barbell reps at pretty much the same speed but obstacle course will actually challenge people's kind of adaptability.
Right.
I'd also like to see some sort of cool like three-dimensional event where instead of just moving linearly across the stadium, there would be some sort of multi-level structure that you would either have different movements or have to like, you know, traverse the levels to sort of get different number of points or something like that. Probably super expensive and dangerous to set up, but and maybe not this year, but in future years there might be some sort of cool thing like that. Along those lines, I would love to see like a climbing event, not just rope climbs, but climbing maybe, you know, a mountain or going to a climbing gym and doing a standardized speed climbing route. Because again, climbing allows for a bit of creativity and adaptability, but it's still a set point A to point B task, so it's a good sort of athletic test. That's about it for my wish list. Mostly sort of athletic, kind of non-gym rep-based stuff. What are you kind of hoping to see?
Yeah, I really like those ideas. I think that three-dimensional thing would blow people's minds. You know, it'd be I don't know if you've seen that show, Ninja Warrior.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff going on. But yeah, I think the ability to move one's body, you know, in different scenarios really is a different skill to, you know, the typical moving a barbell skill. So I think those would be wonderful additions to the games. One thing I'd really like to see, and just sort of from a pure, I kind of like pure events. I like things that are really straightforward. I just like effort, and I like simple skills, and seeing who has the fitness base to accomplish those simple skills and effort. And so one of my key events would be a steeplechase, but using sort of a same height of wall as you had for the sprint chipper last year.
Okay.
So a reasonably high wall, and say it's a 800-meter steeplechase. You've got the lanes on the track.
Yeah.
You know, it would just be incredible. I think the energy requirements would be massive for something like that. Just 2 laps, and maybe there's 4 walls per lap. But I think it'd be incredible for the spectators, and also a real test of grit.
Yeah.
And you know, your climbing ability, your ability to get up and over things would come into play. Maybe not so much as in an obstacle course, but I think it'd be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, it would be fun.
Yeah. And then another thing I had was I think there should be a strongman carry for distance. You know, the Husafell Stone is a classic world's strongest man type carry, and you know, I like the idea of kind of taking things from other tests of fitness, such as triathlon or strongman or whatever else, or rowing, and adapting them to our CrossFit athletes. And you know, I think the ability to lift and carry either a stone or maybe even a dummy of a human size could be a very a very life-saving kind of skill. You know, something that could be actually a survival type skill, and requires another specific kind of set of fitness.
Yeah, cool ideas. Let's go the other direction. What do we want to not have come up at the CrossFit Games?
Yeah.
As an athlete, I'm gonna go ahead and say Ghd Sit-Ups. The reason being, they're a very good exercise for developing, you know, strength and power, flexibility, whatever, in certain parts of your body. But if you put them in a competition, unfortunately, as an athlete, it hands down benefits you. You will go faster if you perform these movements unsafely, dangerously, and in ways that don't use the same muscles as when you do in your training. What I mean by that is, if you, on a Ghd sit-up, you move the feet further out, you have the cushion higher up under your hips, and instead of actually moving your hips down behind the cushion and activating your knee extensors, it benefits you to just whip your spine like a wet noodle. You will go faster, but you're increasing your risk of injury. So I don't like seeing those movements in competition where you have to choose between a faster time and higher risk for injury, or you know, performing the movement as you would in the gym. Some movements are like that, not all of them. The Ghd sit-up is one of those.
Yeah, I agree. And when you mentioned that to me earlier, I thought that's a brilliant way to put it. I mean, we would like to see people expressing their fitness and showing the benefit of good technique, as opposed to just sacrificing technique to get the job done quicker. I think in terms of what I would not like to see, I think a crazy high volume of pull-ups is one of those things. I think, you know, as you mentioned before, the CrossFit Games is going to be shoulder intensive, and I feel that, you know, the event last year, that throwback to 2007, there were a lot of pull-ups in that workout. The judging standards, I mean, the judges were doing the best job they could in this scenario, but when you've got a high volume of reps that are somewhat hard to judge in terms of having butterfly pull-ups, it just kind of creates an unequal test, I believe, for certain people, and a very damaging test.
Yeah, there are definitely, if you're looking to test upper body, strength or endurance or whatever, there are other ways to do it that are more fun for the crowd to watch and that don't destroy your musculature and your hand skin as much as doing 125 pull-ups in a workout.
Right. Yeah. And I almost prefer that they maybe take the butterfly pull-up completely out of the games, which I think would be not a bad thing in terms of judging standards.
It would slow things down, but it would definitely make it easier to tell what reps count.
Right.
That's a big deal at the games.
Yeah, for sure. And they could do this. Early morning workouts.
Oh, like middle of the night wake up thing.
Yeah. Put you in a barracks somewhere, ring a bell, throw water on you, and then you've got to do something crazy and throw up all over the place. So I hope that they don't make you do that sort of stuff. If they do, I think people are mentally resilient enough to endure it, but I don't think it would be. There'd definitely be a mental side to that fitness, but not necessarily optimizing the ability of someone to express their actual physical fitness or physiological fitness.
Yeah, and I think given that the 3-day test of the games is huge stress on the body, I don't know how people would react, having to do some sort of 3 a.m. wake up and workout, and that would totally throw people off for the weekend. Probably we would just see a bunch of depressed level of performances, which wouldn't be fun for anybody.
Right.
So you never know. Dave Castro does have that eye sort of cocked towards the military themed events sometimes, so I feel like that might be coming down the pipe eventually, but hopefully not this year.
Yeah, and the last thing that, I think it's a reason, well, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I shouldn't sugarcoat it. Is underwater swimming. I think it has its place. It's definitely a survival ability, but I think when you have highly competitive people in this highly competitive environment, there's too much of a risk of things happening to those people, and so like a repeated dive for bricks or something like that, or a swim for distance, I think would be outside the boundaries of what's safe. But I'm not a professional in that regard, so we'll see if that actually happens.
Guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I was thinking, they brought up the pig, and the pig probably took a year of development or something. I don't know, and a lot of manufacturing time. Will we see the pig again this year?
Interesting. Yeah, that was it's a great object because it involves a lot of strength, but it's not a typical sort of barbell kind of linear movement. Different athletes can move differently. I think we will see it again, maybe with some heavier loading and maybe as one smaller station in a bigger sort of workout in the stadium. You might have to just flip it back and forth a few times, or just flip it once maybe at the end to sort of get past the finish line, something like that. Real heavy one. Could be cool. Just
to kind of validate its existence for a little bit. And you've called last year's games the ambulatory games.
That's right.
Ambulatory meaning just walking, running, traveling from point A to point B using human locomotion, basically.
Yeah.
And we covered a lot of gymnastics in the regionals. Will this be another ambulatory games?
It's tough to say. I feel that we'll have a bit of a shift away from so much sort of just that work capacity, that grunt work style that we saw last year. We might see a few more sort of dynamic kind of, I guess you call them skill-based events. I'd love to see that, but there's no way we're going to get away from any sort of running and carrying. That's going to be a part of the games, partly because you can only perform so many repetitions as an athlete. Eventually, if you're programming the games, you're going to say, okay, well, we can't do freaking squats every workout. Well, how are we going to, do some more leg work? Well, have them push a sled or have them carry something or have them run. And that sort of helps disperse the load over the body. Still hammering the legs pretty hard, but not at least through full eccentric ranges of motion. So we'll see. We'll see a bunch of that, I bet. Yeah. Speed event? Yeah, we got to see another speed event. Maybe along the lines of the steeplechase you were talking about. Maybe sort of a bit more of a drawn out thing, something like a 400 meter, an 800 meter. It's still gonna be a test of speed for many athletes. I'd love to see another sprint test. They probably won't repeat something they've done in the past, but they'll probably find a way to mix it up. Right. Cool. Well, anyway, it shakes out. We know there's going to be stuff that's going to surprise us. There's going to be stuff that we don't think is going to be that awesome, and then it's going to be awesome. A lot like that pull-up overhead squat workout at
regionals. Shocked a lot of people about how exciting that event was. I'm definitely excited to go down and watch. This will be my 4th year spectating, and this will be your 4th year competing.
4th year competing, yeah.
Yeah, so we're basically on equal status, I guess, in that regard.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably more stressed out during the workouts than I am, but
yeah, that's probably true.
Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see if any of our predictions turn out correct, and come at you with some more reflections once Dave Castro makes some more revelations. WODtv out.
And cut.